Good morning to all. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here. My name is Carla Fuentes. I am the head of sales here at Polaron Language Services, and I'll be your host this morning. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, and the elders past and present. I'm delighted to welcome to stage Yvonne Weldon, who is here today to provide us with a welcome to country.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers. As was said, my name is Yvonne Weldon, and I'm a Wiradjuriwoman from Cowra here in New South Wales. From the waters of the Clare, which later became known as the Lachlan, and of the Murrumbidgee Rivers. I am the elected Deputy Chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, who are the cultural authority under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act for the land we are on. I would like to pay my respects to all elders past and present, to all First Nations, to you and the ancestors' lands that you either are from or have travelled from. My people have practiced our traditions for thousands of years and endless generations. One tradition as shared in various forms across Australia is a welcome to country. It is more than just words or something you tick off on. It is a spiritual process by honouring the ancestors' footsteps we are all walking in, continuing the practice of the many generations before us to the many generations to come. Where the sharing and the trading of our resources, our knowledge and our traditions has been my people's way of life since time began. Trade and shared amongst the nations, tribes and clans that have existed here for over 65,000 years. We traded for necessity and not for empires. The boundaries of our traditional owners are not defined by the hand or by the pen, but through the natural landscapes of the earth. The Eora Nation's country covers the Hawkes River in the north, the Nepean in the west, and the Georges River in the south. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, the elders and the members, I welcome everyone to the land of the Gadigal. I acknowledge Gadigal people whose spirits and ancestors will always remain with this land, our Mother Earth. As we're all gathered here today, let us all acknowledge the many warriors that created pathways for all of us, the ones recognised and those we've never heard of. Our songlines and our customs have sustained us, and they are embedded into the core of this nation. My people are the oldest living culture of the world, and the challenges that we're all faced with today is not the same as it was only a few years ago. Yet it has become an accepted norm. It brings a disadvantage that flows on from one generation to the next. The cycle doesn't only change because of policy or legislation. The battle through the endurance of adversity is our greatest evidence that needs to be included in all that we do. It cannot always be about data and the bottom line, but our lived experience needs to be included as well. Human life and people's opportunity, or lack thereof, cannot be rationalised to balance but will never be equal. Utilise your learnings to help others and use your passion and your commitment to make positive change that is so needed. And don't let the criticism of others that don't have that same commitment to derail yours. As you connect, learn and share today, tomorrow and beyond, know that your insights, your commitment and your leadership can make a difference to the lives of so many, bringing my people, your people and all our people together. And if we think back to July, which was this year's NAIDOC theme, which was get up, stand up and show up, my people have always stood up and shown up. We need to stand together to take action from our ancient and still relevant world into our digital contemporary one. Progress isn't truly achieved if you leave others behind. Remember, not all of us have the same opportunities. Share what you have to help others less fortunate, bringing my people, your people, and all our people together into our multicultural world. Standards and often theories are one thing, but going above and beyond is also a possibility too. because we can achieve so much more when we do so together. All of us can bring about positive changes to multiple generations, and think about the difference you are and can make today that will become the milestones of the future, all our futures. So let us all draw upon my people's spirits as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide you as we strive forward for us all. Again, on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, welcome to Gadigal Land. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I'm delighted to welcome all to our very first in-person event here in Sydney. Today, we will be talking about practical ways of engaging culturally and linguistically diverse communities, some innovative approaches to optimizing your communication strategies, and we'll bring you a couple of wonderful case studies from the New South Wales Multicultural Health Communication Services and Cisco. I hope we can generate a great debate today and we all learn from each other. Now, a bit of housekeeping just before we kick off. We will have a 30-minute break at around 10:15 a.m. with a morning tea and networking. This event is being recorded as well. We will share it Polaron's YouTube channel, and it will also be shared with all of the attendees via email afterwards the event with free resources and material. Now, I would like to begin by thanking Professor Bettina Schulderek and the University of Sydney Business School for their ongoing support to make this event a reality and for being so accommodating. I would also like to thank NADI for their amazing contribution to this forum and the Settlement Services International for supporting this event all along. I invite you to enjoy Marianne Popal Sahit's artwork on display here today. Marianne is an accomplished artist and community leader who is also the founder of the Afghan Women on the Move. To all our partner organizations and guest speakers of today, a big thank you for being part of today's event. Without further ado, let's kick off today's forum by introducing our moderator for the debate, Mustafa Taibi, who is an associate professor in interpreting and translation at Western Sydney University. Mustafa has been teaching and conducting research on community interpreting and translation and intercultural communication. I would like to thank Professor Taibi and ask him to introduce our debate participants to answer the question. Are we ready for an authentic conversation with Australian audiences? Professor? A big applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mustafa Taibi, Associate Professor in Interpreting and Translation at Western Sydney University, and I'm delighted to facilitate the debate today. The debate, as you all know, is based on the question of whether we are ready for an authentic conversation with Australian audiences. The debate is currently organised by Polaron Language Services, which might suggest that when we say, are we ready, we mean language services and their clients. But the question was intentionally made broad in order to leave it open to different interpretations. So when we say, are we ready for an authentic conversation, we can mean governments, politicians, public services, language services, interpreting and translation professionals, and any other professional body or organization. We'll soon find out what our debate teams make of this question, and I'm delighted to introduce both teams, and on both sides we have an outstanding lineup. Can I start by the affirmative team, led by Gary Harkins, the Multi-Regional Operations Manager in New South Wales. Gary, can you please join us? The second member of this team is Pino Migliorino, well-known Managing Director of Cultural Perspectives. And Tatum Spicer, Project Manager at Polaron Language Services. On the other side, we have Yamama Ara, the General Manager, Newcomer Settlement and Integration at Settlement Services International. Thank you, Yamama. Una Turalik from Nepean Blue Mountains Local Health District. And David Keegan, founder and CEO of Host International. Just to give you an idea how we'll be proceeding in the debate, we will start with the affirmative team on my left, starting with the captain, Gary, who will put forward their first or main argument. Then we will give the floor to Yamama, who is leading the second opposing team, to put forward their main argument. And then we have, by the way, the first turn has a time limit of 5 minutes, followed by one speaker from the first team and another speaker from the second team, and each one of them will have 4 minutes. I will be timing them, don't worry about that, and I hope I do a good job timing speakers. And there will be one question for the first team and another question for the second team. And of course, the team will be free to choose the speaker who responds to the question. They don't know the question. It will be a spontaneous question for both teams, and I'm sure both will do great. I will be timing the interventions as I said, and as we come to the end of your time, I will, well, you're too close to raise this piece of paper, so I'll just indicate with my hand, with a hand gesture, that you have 1 minute to go, and then we'll give the floor to the next speaker. Ready? And by the way, we have the judges. Have they already been selected? Angela? Do we have judges already? Or maybe we'll select a group of judges at the end of the debate, and the judges will be the ones who give their verdict, who is the winning team. Let me say that it's not about winning the debate, it's about raising awareness. Okay, let's start. Let's start with Gary. As you like, feel free.
The awkward looking over the glasses thing, because I'm short-sighted rather than long-sighted. Good morning. Thank you for your time. It's wonderful to see so many people here. We've been asked to make the case that we are ready for an authentic conversation with Australian audiences, and we believe we are. One of the main indicators of this within Australia is the extensive and evolving infrastructure that we have in place that allows us to have authentic conversations. The infrastructure that we have now has been built up over decades. It's changed the needs of society, and sometimes it's behind what we need, but generally it allows us to have conversations that move our society's thought process, our understanding of where we live and how we live forward to adapt to the needs of our evolving cultural society. Examples of conversations that we're able to have is with Aboriginal nations and communities, with LGBTQ communities, ethnic, migrant and refugee communities and groups, religious groups and community groups as well, which has never been more important at the moment, and the CALD communities. It also allows communication between public service, government, and the wider community as well, so that we can be heard no matter where we come from, what community we're actually in. The thing to remember about authentic conversations is that they change, and they ebb and flow depending on the current political cycle and the region that you're in. So there's occasional mistakes that we're not talking to each other, or we don't have the ability to talk to each other. And it may be because a particular event worldwide or something local has affected the ability to have that conversation. But the reason the conversation gets back on track and continues and moves forward is because the infrastructure that Australia has that allows that to continue. It never truly stops. Examples of historical moments in that conversation around different aspects is the Redfern Statement. It could not have happened in isolation. There had to be an opportunity for conversations. The Uluru Statement to the Heart is the next major step in that conversation. The Marriage Equity Act, the Racial Discrimination Act, these are examples of what comes from an authentic conversation. And they're able to be had because we have this infrastructure to have those conversations. Even though, looking in hindsight, it may have seemed that we could have had the end of that conversation years, if not decades before, the reality, we're a disparate people, and it takes time for us to agree to allow us to come to settlement of a conversation. Examples of currently is obviously the voice to Parliament, whether that's viable, should happen, a treaty, a Macarena Commission. These are conversations that we're having now. They started decades ago, but we're starting to see them more prominently because we have the capacity to have them. We have the infrastructure there. Republicanism. It's a conversation that's been ongoing for decades. It came up again because of historical events recently, and it may not move forward for some time, but the infrastructure is there that allows it to move forward when we're ready for that conversation. Australian government's budget for and fund engagement. They fund engagement with wider ethnic communities, directly and indirectly. We have a political and societal policy in the front of, in the form of federal, state and territory structures and departments concerned with multiculturalism. Department of Homeland Affairs, Victoria Multicultural Commission, Multicultural New South Wales and others. These bureaucratic and political entities demonstrate our onus on governments to have support and accommodate authentic conversations. Examples of this is community groups, language service providers, educational bodies, professional bodies, NAATI, which is the gold standard for certification within Australia. Some years ago I met someone from Holland who was here in Australia discussing our certification system, and I was shocked to discover they had nothing like it. And they focused on about 2 or 3 languages. She was astounded with the capacity that Australia had built up within the certification system. They are now struggling with the same issue, and they're looking to us to do it. But yes, we do have the infrastructure, and we have authentic conversations.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yamama, are we ready for a response?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. As our colleague on the affirmative team highlighted, we have become more capable of having authentic conversations with Australian audiences. But does that mean we are ready for them? We, on the negative team, don't believe we are, not yet. If we look at key government programs and initiatives such as Aged Care Program, disability services through the NDIS and other key government activities, it's evident that we are not ready. Our governments have moved to embrace digital platforms and systems to reach audiences, but they haven't considered whether these digital platforms will indeed reach non-English speaking communities. There are some good examples of authentic conversations with Australian audiences, but we argue that these are the exceptions and not the rule. For example, are Australian audiences able to understand lived experience of people who are escaping repressive regimes, fearing for their safety, and have experienced system cruelty? From government to corporates to community services, we see an ad hoc approach to authentic communication that is often reactive and in response to a crisis. Before we can be ready for authentic conversations with all Australian audiences, we first need systemic change that enables a more coordinated approach to dialogue. There are lots of conversations happening, but they are happening on a fragmented basis. There needs to be a more centralised way of understanding the trends and creating a plan for better dialogue. We will unpack this by examining 3 keywords from our debate statement: authentic, conversation, and audiences. Audiences. The engagement of audiences themselves is key. Authentic communication must be defined and influenced by the needs of the target audiences. Today, we hope to demonstrate the diversity of Australian audiences as groups of people, grouped by locality or demographic characteristics such as age, gender, and ethnicity to direct informational communication. The sad reality is that in modern multicultural Australia, we are nowhere near delivering information in a way and through the media which members of migrant communities speak to themselves and to others. This was highlighted at the recent pandemic, where health messaging targeting cult communities caused confusion, thanks to the use of Google translators. Translation is a nuanced art, requiring interpretation of the context of what is being communicated, not just the words themselves. Another example is the digitization of government services. For most of us in this room today, this change represents progress and greater ease of access. But for the refugees that my organisation supports, this has created access barriers as a result of low digital literacy and limited access to digital hardware. These examples show that Australia is not ready to acknowledge that there are multiple segments that make up our broader audience. These audiences need to be understood from a linguistic point of view, but also in the development and delivery of communication, including identifying their channels and intermediaries who can best deliver this information. How can we be ready to have an authentic conversation if we don't truly understand who we are speaking to? Conversation. This takes me to the second important term in the proposition that is about conversation. A conversation is more than just exchange of ideas and opinions, it's also exchange of lived realities. Authenticity. This brings us to our last point about authenticity, which we approach through the lens of realness. What makes a conversation authentic? Authenticity is about the attitude and intention of the person starting the conversation. It's about ensuring a conversation has purpose, is meaningful, and is free from bias and assumptions. Australia has come a long way in reaching out to and engaging with diverse linguistic and cultural communities, but we are not ready to put in the resources and focus on these conversations to ensure that they are authentic and they lead to understanding and change. Becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable leads to more authentic conversations and can be a driver of meaningful and lasting change. I want to conclude by reiterating our key points. Diversity and inclusion are probably the most challenging but urgent cultural work for our time. And we all play an active role in perpetuating or rejecting a generation of biases and systemic discrimination. Achieving the latter requires commitment and courage, even when conversations get uncomfortable. There are lots of conversations happening, but it is happening on a fragmented basis. There needs to be a more centralized way of understanding the trends and creating a plan for better dialogue. But we are truly not ready for a meaningful engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second speaker of the affirmative team, that's Tatum. Thank you, Tatum.
Hello, hi, I'm Tatum. Okay, so I'm going to be the second affirmative speaker. I'm going to start by perhaps responding to some of the statements that you made, and then I'll go on to present my stance, which is the benefits of having this engaged conversation and the way we're seeing it reflected in the Australian society and landscape. So with regards to your mama's point about issues in aged care, NDIS, and with key government policies and the ways that multiculturalism is perhaps not being addressed adequately. Of course it's not a perfect model, but I do believe that, for example, with language service providers, and of which in Australia we have many in place and available, I do believe that they play a role in helping with the communication of key government policies to CULT communities, and we saw that a lot during COVID, where language service providers were there in place to provide not necessarily just a written translation of a particular document, but a variety of multimedia styles, because sometimes communities absorb information through various means. On top of that, I do believe that community leaders themselves play a role in sometimes have a bit of a duty to sort of spread the word to their community about certain government policies. So sometimes that is, although it's not a long-term solution, it's sometimes a short-term solution to ensuring transparency and clear communication of what's going on. And with regards to your mama's comment about issues around diversity and inclusion in Australia, again, we don't necessarily have a perfect model, but I do believe that there is a strong emphasis in the Australian landscape on diversity and inclusion. I mean, from festivals to diverse, even food festivals, street festivals, film festivals. I do believe that there is a concerted effort to, like even myself, I love embracing other cultures within Australia, and I feel like there is such an opportunity to do so, even on a weekly basis. I don't feel like I go a single week without seeing something advertised, whether it's an event or a restaurant, which gives me the opportunity to embrace a different culture and meet people from a different background, talk to them, engage with them. I myself, I'm Jewish, so it's really quite wonderful when I can meet someone and we can share our culture and have that exchange. Furthermore, I'm going to now touch on the benefits of having this authentic conversation and the way that I do truly believe it is reflected in society. First and foremost, I mean, if you drive around Sydney, Melbourne, I'm from Melbourne, you can really soak up different cultures and communities in certain areas which are quite renowned for a particular cultural group. For example, in Melbourne, we have the iconic Lygon Street Carlton, where personally I believe you have to go down the side streets to have the best restaurants, but the main road is known to be Little Italy. We have Oakley in Melbourne, which is very renowned for Greek food. I myself, Caulfield in Melbourne is said to be the Jewish area, so if you ever want to get good bagels, I would recommend. On top of that, as I hinted at before, we always have whether it's a street festival or a film festival, even night markets where you can definitely celebrate and embrace different food and cultures, and you get the biggest variety of people there. Everyone is there with the same attitude of wanting to really celebrate the diversity that we have in this country. Now touching on some more technical stuff, 50% of Australians were born overseas or have a parent born overseas, according to the 2021 census. I mean, if that's not indicative of the society that we have and the face of it, then I don't know what is. There were thank you. Oh, that went so fast. Okay. Thank you.
The second speaker of the opposing team, Una or David? Okay.
Sorry guys, I am a little bit nervous and someone was trying to do the wrong thing this morning. Anyway, so, are we ready to engage with authentic conversation with Australian audience? The engagement of audience is the key. When we speak about the Australian audiences, we need to include automatically and not add on the groups such as ATSI groups, culturally and religiously diverse groups, LGBTQI+, and disability groups, as well as what is very common in my district, intercultural groups. Australian audiences are not only those of Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic backgrounds that often identify themselves as that in the cultural competency training that I've been delivering for over 13 years. I'm an Australian. I do have a strange name, strange accent, but still I'm Australian. Australian audiences do not have the same starting point. However, we should have the same aim and be consulted. How are we reaching or speaking about, how are we to reach or speak about the unity, success and strength? And this is a motto from the Border and Protection Government website. When those that we elected or to represent us are discriminating, putting down Australians publicly and getting away with it. Think about Pauline Hanson and the Burqa fiasco, or Pauline Hanson not acknowledging the country appropriately, or past government during the election that just passed sending us wonderful SMSs saying boats are coming. A boat arrived today. We are further and further away from unity that is needed to place us at the same table to have an authentic conversation with each other. In the past 5 to 10 years, the government has made great effort to develop diversity and inclusion in order to bridge the gap between different population groups in this lucky country of ours. However, it all appears to be tokenistic, as there is always a group which is left behind. Since my arrival to Australia, there was always a group of Australians. By the way, I arrived in 1993. The group that was looked down on The group that was looked down on then was those of refugee backgrounds and from South Europeans. Until the Bog Boy movie came out, and then suddenly everyone wanted to belong to my group. Then it was all those across the globe who were of Islamic faith. Prior to that, it was those of Australian Chinese descent. And most recently, groups that were picked on were Australian Chinese, my group again, which is health workers, and those living in Western and Southwestern Sydney, me again. To get ready to have the authentic conversation with Australian audiences, we need to go beyond tokenistic, beyond ticking a box and recognising our First Nation people like New Zealand did. I'll try to hurry up. To conclude, we are far from reaching and achieving this because of the fear within our community. Think about what happened 2 weeks ago in heart of multicultural Sydney, Parramatta, when neo-Nazi signs were displayed during the soccer game. Or think about our ISIS brides, who are also Australians, but they can't come back home because of the fear. We will be ready. The New South Wales health example would be when Aboriginal health, multicultural health, I think of the past, and diversity becomes part of core business and no longer is added on.
you, Una. I think we should give this team an extra point because they're the first to stick to time. Thank you.
Not that I will contest that, sorry.
The last participant from the affirmative team, Pino.
I'm going to use my own clock, I don't trust you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, as you would see, we're not all prepared for 4 minutes, are we? I mean, it's really hard. 4 minutes is not very long. So I'm going to get very fast. You're going to have to keep up. You're going to have to keep up because our message is a really important one. It's not to prove to you that we're having the authentic conversation. It's to prove to you that we're ready. Now, in being ready doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. And that's what we're going to talk about. Gary, he provided a really good framework and a scan of what's actually already there in terms of our infrastructure. Tatum talked about a whole range of things which are really working in terms of the ability to express diversity. The very fact that we have areas which are indeed diverse means that we are allowed. There are many societies which we're not allowed to actually claim linguistic rights, claim heritage rights, and this needs to be identified. I will argue that we are definitely ready as we understand the consequences if we don't. Listen to that, if we understand the consequences if we don't. It is a consequences which matter. Now, in terms of the negative, they've talked a little bit about things, but what they haven't done is given you the full picture. And the full picture is a process of change. The argument from the second speaker I find are really interesting. The interesting aspects of that is that the first one is because health workers become an ethnic group. I thought that was really interesting. And whether they're discriminated against or not, I'm not quite sure. But the other thing is that notion of there is a process of change. Of course, who are the people who are most marginalised in that society today? They are different from those who were before. They are different from the 1960s migrants who used to be chased around in hall clocks and beaten up if they caught you, very fast. Now, that process itself is a process of change, and it's a process of engagement of what is then always the need that we're going to have to deal with the new, and in dealing with the new becomes the normal, and that's where we're actually got to go. I find it also really interesting that what we have done is we've referenced COVID as a problem, but COVID is our making, because what happened with COVID? We did hear about translations and machine translations. We saw people trying to take shortcuts, and what did that do? In Victoria, that led to people dying. And I've been in this field for 40 years. I've never been able to say that before. Our lack of engagement says that we actually caused harm. Now, what happened in the northwest suburbs of Melbourne was not that information wasn't translated, it's the fact that the understanding of the messages and the changes of requirements were not being communicated in real time. Now, are we ready for the discussion? Yes, we're ready for the discussion because we understand that if we don't, there will be harm. So when the consequences of inauthentic conversations is potential death, we are ready to have authentic conversations. Participation and voice. There is a clear sense that we're getting more and more people in communities from diversity who are actually participating, and that's really important to us. We are constantly looking to involve people of diversity in terms of what we need to do. And I think, again, when the cultural diversity sector finds itself around the planning table, as we are now, we are ready. In terms of population, the population is immense. We need, and as the last couple of years have shown, we need 200,000 net migration each year. We need that because that is the way our society will run. So when our absence, that is our absence as diversity, causes economic pain, then what unites all sides is the politics that we are ready for migration. In terms of political power, our ethnic groups are getting stronger. There is a concentration of our language groups on different electorates. They are there and they're pushing forward. Cultural and linguistic diversity through all levels of government demands that we are ready. Is it time?
You still have 2 minutes on
I might have 2 minutes. No. No, it's time.
That's your time.
That's my time. All right, so I've now got 30 seconds. We're ready. We have the knowledge and we have the capacities. We have the understanding and the political imperatives. We have the information. And are we ready? Well, we're already having the debate, aren't we? We're here today. Thank you.
You know, it's still warming up. Okay. The last speaker of the opposing team, David.
Thank you. So, we've heard from the affirmative team today that they think we have infrastructure in place, that multicultural conversation is all about food and arts, and that essentially change is about a process. But the real conversation today is about whether we're ready for an authentic conversation with Australian audiences. And we want to argue, obviously, that we're not ready for that yet. Yes, there might be some things in place. Yes, there might be a process. But are we really in an equal relationship and having an equal conversation? Conversation is not about a one-way or being invited to a table. It's actually about having an equal conversation. We acknowledged traditional people today when we arrived. That's great. But how many of us are actually taking time to get to know Aboriginal people, hearing their story, listening to what they really want to see? Is the voice to Parliament really where we need to go? Is it really that fantastic, or should we be going further? These are the things we want you to think about. Yes, we do have some infrastructure, but what the affirmative team fails to realise is that most of the change we've had has actually been forced by community, and by community voice trying to reclaim power. It hasn't been invited to the table. And it still perpetuates colonialism and power imbalance that we think is one of the barriers that exists. However, we do need to be having these conversations. But funding is inadequate and they're not equal. Essentially, we believe that authentic conversations are about the degree to which a person's actions are congruent with their values and desires despite external pressures to social conformity. We would argue that a lot of the tolerance and the narrative that we have is actually about social conformity rather than authentic conversations, where there's a requirement to actually listen, accept responsibility for change, and continue that conversation going forward. We believe that much of the rhetoric about these conversations is actually tick-a-box inclusion rather than authenticity in communications. So authentic conversations actually occur where the participants are being honest about what they think and how they feel. Importantly, they're able to talk without fear and without attack by others and do not feel the need to be defensive or aggressive themselves. This includes being able to talk about their own fears or shortcomings. It requires trust and a willingness to hear negative feedback and take responsibility for mistakes. It requires the powerful sharing power, which we believe is not yet happening. An example is the recent death of the Queen sparked a debate around whether Aboriginal people could really be honest about their feelings about the role of the Queen and colonialism in that space. Whilst we want to talk about the voice to Parliament, the voices of Aboriginal people were still being shut down out of respect for the Queen. We can understand that, but is that authentic conversation? Where that actually was an opportunity to actually have an honest and open debate about the position of Aboriginal people in this country. So conversations must be two-way, and they must be more than just ticking a box. I also want to pick up on one of the other points of the affirmative team, that's that we do have gold standard in RT accreditation. We have great translation services in Australia. But often we make the mistake of thinking that translation is all that's involved. And it's much more than that, as many of you know. It's about relationship, it's about two-way conversation, it's about facilitating conversation more than just through language translation. And we would actually use COVID as an example of where there was some positive process, but actually much of the effort was still led by government, led by the powerful, trying to communicate messages in language to people, but failing to recognise that actually community-based information systems and community-based knowledge actually was fundamentally missing from that debate and was part of what caused some of the misunderstanding. And also in our experience, in our organisation, whilst there was some good progress during the COVID period, now that we're coming out of that period, those practices are not necessarily continuing. So we would argue that there's still, yes, there's some good things happening, but we're not quite there ready for that real, authentic, deep conversation that's needed. So,
thank you, David. Thank you.
That's probably enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Compelling valid arguments on both sides, I must admit. Now, a question for the affirmative team. Given my background, I'll focus on interpreting and translation and language services in general. My understanding of your position is that because we have the infrastructure there, everything seems to be working. In relation to language services, we have the infrastructure there for decades, at least since the beginning of the 70s. And you mentioned the COVID crisis. Do you believe that the infrastructure and the services we have there and also the policies are working? Given that during the COVID crisis there were complaints, there were press reports about ineffective translations, translation errors, and lack of communication with the community, the broad community and the CALD communities in particular. You can choose your speaker to respond.
Okay. How long have I got?
4 minutes.
4 minutes?
Yeah.
That's longer than the speech I had. Okay, so here's the thing. What is the difference between being prepared and then the action, and who motivates the action? So let's put the discussion on the table around interpreting and translating infrastructure. Gary was spot on when he talked about Australia being not just world competitive, but world's best in translations. In America, they accredit 6 language groups. Gary, what's the language group accreditation in Australia? 60. And that is a process by which we get people to actually define language, be able to codify language, test language, and mark language. You need language experts to do it. And given that that is a long-term process, for all the plethora of new arrival communities, then what are we going to do with them? We know that the process required for the translation, accreditation or credentialing is long. So what we do is we create a category of community recognised, because people still need interpreting. And in that community recognised, what are we concerned about? We're concerned about interpreting theory and ethics. That if you're in a small community, you hold a very strong responsibility to ensure that the people you're speaking to are protected, their privacy is protected, and that you don't exert your own value systems on them. That's Australia. We have a positive onus on material. I cannot tell you, and every translator worth their salt, if they're being honest, will tell you that the amount of work translators are getting in the last 2 years is beyond belief. There's work everywhere, because no department now will go out with a campaign without having multilingual work. We've got representatives here on our opposing team working in the Department of Health, and they claim, what's the big claim for your language count on the, do you know?
How many languages?
How many languages did you put out information for COVID?
It would be over 40.
It was 63 languages. 40 in your district, 63 languages. So here's the thing. The question is, do we have the capacities to do the thing well? Yes, we do. Do we have the supply side? Yes, we do. Do we have the demand side? Yes, we do, in the form of government policy, in the form of community expectation, because now we can no longer accept that people from non-English speaking background do not know what's going on. We have floods, we have fires, we have pestilence, we have issues, we have rats, that's the pestilence bit, not COVID. We have COVID, right? We've got all these things. There has to be a positive bonus of ensuring that people are communicating. Now, does that mean that people do the right thing all the time? No. Those of you in hospitals will know that some people still get asked to interpret without any type of qualification. Those of you who are around know that someone will say, just give me the machine-based translating and that will be good enough. That's the problem with us. The problem with us is the user, not the system. Are we ready? Yes. Have we got the mechanisms? Yes. Have we got the qualified people? Yes. What is missing is the sense of, as a society, we need to say, we've got to be better at doing this, because near enough is not good enough. If I don't get the message out properly, I actually create harm for someone. That is a compelling argument, and that's why we have to say, are we ready? Absolutely. What needs to change, though, is a mindset. What needs to change, though, is a community expectation that multilingualism, diversity communication, and fundamental authentic engagement is the norm in Australia. That is an attitude. That is what we need to work on, because everything else is what we're ready.
Thank you, Simon. And let's keep the focus on language services and ask the following question. Well, your team, some people refer to your team as the negative team, and I've been politically correct to call you opposing team. Don't you think there's too much negativity in relation to language services and the effectiveness of communication between public services and CALD communities? You've mentioned funding, but if you compare the situation of Australia with that of other countries, even European countries, can't you admit that the language services here are pioneering, are much more developed than in other countries, including European countries? And don't you see that the language services have been working effectively for decades, and as Pina has mentioned, they cover a large number of languages, both in terms of language service provision and professional accreditation or certification?
Look, I want to say that we're not here to pick on language services. I think what our point is about arguing that translation is one piece, and I think we could always find holes in the translation process and how it's done. But what we're highlighting is that there is a danger in putting translation as being the solution. So take Centrelink, for example, probably one of the government departments that I think has the most translated documents. But how many times do you hear about migrants and refugee communities just completely not understanding that organisation? Now, I would argue that's because there's a communication problem there, not a translation problem. They're different. And I think the point that our team is making is that, and we would probably agree with Pina on the attitude is important, but actually there's some pieces missing around the equality of the conversation and the intent of the conversation that goes way beyond just whether it's translated in language. If you like, translation's about being able to at least be at the table and talk. But the next bit, which is equally important, if not more important about conversation, is are you listening? Are you taking that feedback? Are you being informed by that other person's conversation? So I guess to answer the question, I mean, yes, there are great things happening in translation. It's available. I would argue that it's not universally used. We're probably in a room where we're preaching to the converted in this regard, and we forget that actually there are many rural medical services that still don't use interpreters. There are many specialists that still don't use interpreters. There are many different components of the community that don't use interpreters routinely. But that is changing. So I think we're not here to say that there should be more funding necessarily and that's the solution. I think we're here to say, let's take it to the next level and actually have a real conversation with people, and let's not assume that if we translate everything, then we'll be good, because that's not our experience, that's not how it works. So I'll leave it at that.
Now we have a couple of minutes to get our judges to choose the winning team.
Thank you so much. So we have changed our rules, and we would like to make this more immersive, and we would like everyone to participate. So you are all going to be the judge here. So please, we're going to raise your hand, the ones that you want to vote for the, how do we call it, the opposite side? Affirmative and opposite. So please, let's start for the affirmative side. So raise your hands, the one that are voting for the affirmative side. 1, 2, okay. And for the opposite side now. Well, I think we have a winner. Congratulations over the side. Thank you so much to everyone. It was a delightful, insightful debate, and we have some prizes for everyone.
We have some trophies from the $2 shop.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
I don't want to lose you to say they're losing. Let's come second. Here's your prize.
Thank you so much to all our participants for such an insightful debate. It is now time to enjoy a delicious morning tea courtesy of Natty. We'll take a 30-minute break before we jump on the next session. So see you in a bit and enjoy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I think the majority is here, so are we ready to start? Great. I wanted to make a question. Have you heard of the concept of ethical translations? No? Well, yes, great. Well, let's get Eva to tell us a little bit more about that. Eva Hussein is the director and founder of Polaron Language Services and plays an active role in the global development of the company. A former refugee, practicing interpreter and translator. Eva is very passionate about ethical language services. So over to you, Eva.
Thank you, Carla, and thanks everyone again for coming. Look, I won't take up too much of your time, but I think we've touched on a couple of the themes that I wanted to cover, and one is, not doing translations for the sake of translations, not putting things up on a website that nobody can read, and I am very passionate about doing the right thing, and looking at the supply chain of translation. So those of you that are language services users may not know where your translations are being made, for example. So I do have a little booklet if anyone wants to grab it. But essentially what I wanted to talk to you about, being a practicing interpreter and translator and also language service provider, a lot of what was covered in the debate really resonated with me. And I hope it resonated with you, because it's not about ticking boxes, it's not about doing fancy brochures and or putting things up on a website. Somebody, I think Pino mentioned Victoria. Look, we didn't do such a good job in Victoria because we translated everything for everybody and put it up on a website that nobody could find or read, and so, don't do that. Doing ethical translations, what does that mean? I'll move on to the next slide if somebody can help. Yeah, cool. I think of it like if you think about food or clothes or anything that we do a lot of, that's sort of disposable, fast fashion, that's what it looked like. That's what it looks like, piles of clothes that go to waste. I think translations are a little bit like that, to be honest, and I've been around for long enough to tell you that it is true. In that we, again, translate everything for everybody, but who is it getting to? I always think of the 18-year-old Eva that came here to Australia, goodness, 40 years ago nearly, that didn't speak a word of English and needed to understand the system. It's about targeted, clear, precise information accessible in a way that I can get and understand, right? So if you are doing translation, stop right now. Think about who you want to communicate with, what you want to communicate, and who is working in your supply chain. Unfortunately, a lot of work, and you might not be aware of it if you are a purchaser of language services, goes overseas. And the trouble with that is that, yes, they may be well educated and fantastic translators, but they don't understand the Australian context. There's a difference between territory, as we understand it in Australia, and a region. So by working with Australian translators and actually asking your language service provider, whoever that may be, who are your translators? Can I have a look at their CV? What are their names? You know, because otherwise it's a industry that's not very transparent. So we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll just, there's a lot of text there, but what are ethical translations? This is something I've come up with, by the way. It doesn't really exist, except in this booklet and in my head, and now on the slide. You know, fit for purpose. What is it that someone is going to read? What's the mode of your translation? Does it really have to be translated? Can you do a video? Can you do a podcast? Yeah? And they need to accomplish a specific goal. You can't communicate all the messages at once, so, you know, chunk it into smaller bits and see what is it that people actually need to know and what you need to achieve, and also how to measure it, yeah? How do you measure effectiveness of your translation? If you're going to put it on a website that is, you know, where it's deeply buried, you set yourself up for failure, I think. They need to be, you know, to my mind anyway, have a very clear and transparent supply chain. Who are you working with? If you're asking for the community to provide input, are you paying them? If you're not paying them, why not? Yeah? And, you know, we certainly support the local industry. People here through COVID, although we were translating a lot, you know, a lot of interpreters were not working. Or the mode of how they have to work has changed. They now have to go on video and all of that. And you do need to build in some sort of a quality review process. You know, your brochures that you develop, or your fact sheets, or your website content goes through several levels of checking before you publish it, yeah? Why aren't you doing it with translations? You can't trust one translator. And why am I saying this? Because I'm one and I don't trust my own work. It has to be checked by somebody else if it's being published, yeah? Mino in particular has talked about creating risk for the consumers. It is something that needs to be looked at, and also waste. I think, you know, like we've thrown money at the problem, but perhaps not fixed some of the things that should have been fixed. And look at the employment condition. Look, who are your translators? Ask for their name. And on that note, I'll hand over back to Carla. There's this little booklet, and if anyone's really interested in exploring this, you can talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you very much. I'm now delighted to introduce our next presenter. Bettina Stularek is an associate professor at the University of Sydney Business School. Bettina's core research interests lie at the intersection of cross-cultural management, international HRM, and management of diversity. Her work has been published in top-tier international journals, and she's the lead editor at the Sage Handbook of Contemporary Cross-Cultural Management. I would like to hand over Bettina now, who will guide us through this discussion with Emma and Jesus. Thank you, Bettina.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to host the events on this land. And it has been one of the most beautiful acknowledgement of the country I have seen. So thank you so much, Eva and the team for giving this pleasure and experience today. Thank you to the extremely engaging and emotionally invested panelists. That's been a heated conversation, and I think we have gained a lot from it. On this ground, in this very classroom, I teach MBA cohorts, I teach some of our other programs, and authentic communication is key to that. We don't talk much about translation, but what we do talk about a lot is the attitudes, the mindset, and the self-awareness. So when we talk about translation and the importance of clear communication, we try to dig a little bit deeper and think about things such as accents and what emotion they evoke in us subconsciously, unconsciously. Whose accents makes us smile and feel really nice to be around them, and whose accents are difficult or maybe more emotionally loaded than others. So we really evoke some of those conversations and reflect ourselves. Every day I admit to my students, like everyone else, I have those biases as well. I am more aware of them, but they are still there. And we can't have those authentic conversations unless we look into ourselves and realize that we all carry a bit of that baggage with us. So that's what we do here in this business school. But there are people all over Australia that do amazing things, enabling a systemic change within the Australian society and beyond. And I have a great pleasure and honor to introduce two of them today. And they will present the work that they have been invested in for a number of years, for actually significant number of years for both of them. And one of the speakers unfortunately couldn't join us in person today. Jesusa Helaratni is with us on Zoom. We think everything should work, okay? We tested it in the break, but if it doesn't, please, bear with us. Jesusa is the Deputy Director of the New South Wales Multicultural Health Communication Service. She has almost 20 years of experience running major multicultural health communication and media campaigns. And of course, her role managing and leading the response to COVID-19 has been massive. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about it. So, Jesusa, thank you so much for being with us despite the circumstances.
I apologize that I can't join you in person. I am a close contact, and being part of the COVID-19 response team and New South Wales Health, we have to set an example. So thank you so much, everyone. It's a pleasure. And I heard the beginning of some of the debate, and I'm sorry that I can't be there today. But I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I am joining from today as well. I join you from the land of the Darug people, and also pay respect to elders past and present, and also to multicultural communities represented in this forum today. As Bettina said, I am from the Multicultural Health Communication Service, and I would like to acknowledge the members of my team, my team members, our team who is there as well at the forum, with John Alsop, Sylvia Giannoni, and Natasha Reeve, who's from our team, joining you today in person. But I also I'm part of the New South Wales Health COVID and Response Media team. So if you haven't heard of the Multicultural Health Communication Service and what we do, I really acknowledge what Eva and Bettina said about how important it is. It's not just about translations, but it's about an overall holistic approach. And this is what we do, and hope that you can find out more about what our service does. Yes, so basically what we do is we are a multicultural health communication service. We've been around since 1997, and we basically, our guiding principles are cultural responsiveness, health literacy, co-design and collaboration, and also safety and quality, but most of all, addressing health inequities, vulnerable communities, and using arts in health approaches. We do value-added translations, in-language multimedia, resource development, consultation advice, multicultural health campaigns, research and evaluation. And I'd like to touch on what Eva said today is about a translation. For us at our service, New South Wales Health does not follow any machine translations. We always have to have a NATI accredited translator, and then we have a checker. And I think that's quite important. And even at times, we have bilingual community educators and workers checking and triple checking the resources, because it is important, as we said, that it's clear and up to the communities. So I just wanted to share what we've done for the New South Wales Health pandemic response. We've helped support the culturally, linguistically diverse communities in New South Wales by supporting New South Wales Health in partnership with Multicultural New South Wales, Department of Customer Service, statewide and local health districts. Across the New South Wales, we have multicultural health services, and we have developed up to 2,000 resources in 60 languages, and they're all on a New South Wales government websites. There's a New South Wales Health and MHC, Multicultural Health Communication Service websites. And I think touching on what was imparted before, where you have translations, but if people can't access them, then what's the point of doing these translations? I think what's important is that you make sure that when you do translations, there's a promotional plan, there's a distribution plan, whether you distribute that to people face-to-face, to festivals, but also how is it accessible on the websites? So as you can see in the New South Wales Health website, we've made sure that you can target them by topic, get them, access them by resources by language, and even the languages are available on in language as well as the English term of that language. So we have direct engagement with religious and community leaders to share information through networks. We reached out to local health districts and also supported the COVID testing and vaccination clinics. And at a certain point, we even did specific targeted communities as well. We actually worked with religious community and multicultural media in representing 2,500 representatives of religious and community bodies and groups. We also had online multiple languages shared with community organizations and networks. And this increased participation and presence on multicultural community and radio and print. And I think what we wanted to do is make sure that if, for example, there's low literacy in some of the languages, we made sure that they're available in language. So we engaged a lot of people and we translated them and we developed accessible COVID-19 resources to help people with disability and low literacy levels to easy read text and fact sheets, picking up again from what Eva was saying. If you're just not developing a resource and getting them translated, you're making sure they're going to be used. So we also, for best practice, we have them captioned and we have them in languages. We also get vaccinated messages from so many community, religious, doctors. We worked with the Core Pacific Collective. We worked with the Sudanese Doctors Association. We were meeting with them on a weekly basis and making sure that we're able to target the messaging accordingly to the community. We even have the Tongan Princess, Her Royal Highness Princess Angelica from Tonga, who did a video and she delivered it in Tongan for the community, and it was fantastic. She said she wanted to share that message about vaccination. And that's the kind of support that we were able to get that from religious, from community, and from even princesses to deliver the vaccination messages. And one of the things that we wanted to share with you is the New South Wales government initiatives that has been quite unique in New South Wales. Of course, the messaging for COVID was about making sure that the information that you're sharing is depending on the state. So in July 2021, we launched a partnership, the New South Wales government launched a partnership with SBS, delivering live interpreting on the daily 11 a.m. COVID-19 media update in several languages. And this was the first of its kind in Australia and continued and generated up to 2 million views. In New South Wales, we also, during the Delta outbreak, we delivered COVID-19 daily key points. It was another delivery in New South Wales. We had print and audio recordings in multiple languages, and these are the languages, and even for the Yazidi community, and we made that available in MHCS website. So when you click on the JPEG and the MP3, you can actually share that on WeChat, on your WhatsApp, on Viber. That could be accessed, and it was accessed by broadcasters and newspapers and journalists on the day. So when the press conference at 11 a.m. happened, we had these simplified messaging already translated and ready in the evening for those who missed it. And then picking up from that, we also developed and put up the Multicultural Media Online Conference, where we partnered up Ministry of Health, Multicultural Health Communication Service, and Multicultural New South Wales, where we have weekly, at that time, weekly COVID-19 pandemic outbreaks, and fortnightly now, since April 2022. And we've now done messaging, not just on COVID, but other health matters. This afternoon, if you're available at 4 p.m., Dr. Carrie Chan and Dr. Jan Fizel will be holding one to answer some COVID-19 updates and public health announcements. We've also targeted, it's not about just using different kind of ambassadors, but those who are unique, because we knew that it was important to target the COVID-19 youth ambassadors. We made sure that we were able to target not just the older generation, but also the younger generation who had influence with their peers, with their parents, their intergenerational messaging. So we were able to lead a campaign where we had a multicultural youth ambassadors. We had 12 who were able to engage young people on COVID safe and vaccination messages. And we were able to make sure that we trained them, we gave them the messages, and they delivered and co-designed videos on their own and shared it. We had at one point 3 videos that reached up to close to 30,000 views in 1 week. And unfortunately, I can't share the video because the sound doesn't work, but there were some videos there. So I guess from our learnings, what we learned was effective engagement with communities was to ensure that messages distributed were embedded in cultural understanding and practices. Organizations were best placed to disseminate messages via the networks. And what Eva said earlier was, were we paying them? Yes, it was important that you were giving them token of appreciation for the work that they were providing for us. And any ambassadors and religious leaders that we asked to do videos, we made sure that we gave them a token of appreciation for their time. The resources and funding was important, that there was funding to support organizations to produce audiovisual materials, and also a series of guiding principles around the development of local adaptation of health information. And I'm so proud to let you know that later on this year, we will be coming up with a best practice as part of our refugee health translation project to let people know what is the best practice in developing resources for refugee communities and migrant communities. And also to support stakeholders, we also developed a glossary of immunization terms. And these were the terms that we developed. And like as Eva said earlier, it was important that they were double checked. And we did check that. This was done in simple, of course, this our clinical terms for vaccination glossary. We had them checked, triple checked by NATI accredited checkers and translators, but then we also had them checked by medical clinicians from those communities. We have them in 30 languages. They were checked by clinicians and then triple checked again for any changes. They're available on our Multicultural Health Communication Service website. And since it's October, Mental Health Month, I wanted to share with you that it was one of our key messages during COVID was to have mental health messaging during the pandemic. These are fact sheets available on the website, as well as a partnership with Transcultural Mental Health, where we have their clinicians speak in languages for videos to share with on social media and with communities. We also had a multicultural community well-being campaign where we targeted, we had a partnership with Settlement Services International and youth mental health advocates, and we developed 6 videos to share with a combined video. And what we did here was we co-designed some videos with young people from multicultural backgrounds to share their messages on how they kept sane and how they kept healthy and safe during COVID. And we'll share you the links of the videos. Unfortunately, I can't play them today. And also recently, we just launched the multicultural mindfulness resources. It's available in Arabic, Bangla, Mandarin, Greek, and Spanish resources. Please, would love you to use them. These are 6 exercises in audio and video format that are free and can be accessed without a referral. And these programs and these exercises are evidence-based and have been very popular within communities. Please share them. They're also on our website. Unfortunately, I wanted to share our community testimonial who was able to share how effective it was for the Arabic community. But then I also wanted to just say thank you to the people that we've worked with the Department of Customer Service, Multicultural New South Wales. We've also worked with Loud, some agencies as well, Loud at Com, for the partnership that we've had, where we won the Let's Do It vaccination campaign, where we won the Best Community Business Award for this year. So this is a lot of work for a lot of the members of the groups, but one thing that COVID brought was we brought us all together, where we worked collaboratively in making sure that we develop and deliver resources and information to communities. And just wanted to let you know that due to COVID, we set up a cold working group, and we have been meeting every week, and we still continue to do so with key partners. So a reminder from Dr. Carrie Chant is to mask up always in New South Wales. This is I don't know if you've seen this video that went viral, where Dr. Chant and some members of the New South Wales Health team was dancing in TikTok to make sure that the messages of masking up in New South Wales. But thank you so much for letting me speak and for allowing me to speak online. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. And just it was lovely to have you. You can stay with us if you want to, because you can hear us. And I'll invite now to follow on in a very, very different context.
Yes, it's going to shift a bit.
I'll invite Emma to join us. I'm just realizing, Emma, we don't have the slides on there just yet.
Okay.
So let us just try to get the slides on there.
Underwater.
No. Emma Broadbent is actually someone I know got to know very recently, and she's kind of closer to my home space business because of where she comes from. She's actually the Corporate Social Responsibility Regional Manager for ANZ and Pacific Islands for Cisco, and she actually prides herself to be the learning and development team leader. She builds her relationships and long life career on the principles of trust, and that's really important to her work. And the work that she is doing within Networking Academy is something that I think has application across so many different sectors and communities, and it has been just yet underexplored and not enough people know about it. I know many do, but I think that there is much more awareness that could be around this program, and a lot of inspiration of what every business can do to actually make a difference. So Emma, thank you so much for coming and sharing the insights.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello everybody. My name is Emma Broadbent. My background, I'm also a migrant. I came from the UK when I was 3. My parents were all a teaching family, so my parents both taught English as a second language in Turkey. So merhaba to anyone who's Turkish in this room. They taught English as a second language in Turkey in the late 60s in an area called Zonguldak. And so from a very early age, I've been inspired to work with communities. I've had the family home looks like a Turkish bazaar. There's carpets everywhere, and I've just been very fortunate to have that background. So my family is obviously very important to me, and I'm very proud of my roots. So yes, I went back to university later in life, in my 30s. I started in early childhood, so the little person that was running around before was my world for 15 years. And then I went back to the University of Technology, and I did a Bachelor of Adult Education. And the doors opened after I did that degree, and this was one of the companies that wanted me to come in, a very huge multinational IT company. So hands up who's heard of Cisco, and it's okay if you haven't. Oh my goodness me, okay. Okay, so basically we are the infrastructure of the internet for those who don't know who we are. But we made a lot of money in the 90s as a company. A lot of people driving around with Maseratis, having a lovely time in San Jose, in America. And one man, who was a teacher, who started working at Cisco in a program manager role, decided we needed to give something back because we were making a lot of money, but what was going to be our corporate social responsibility program of choice? And the flagship Cisco Networking Academy launched. And this month, it's its 25th year anniversary. So it's been running for 25 years. So the numbers I'm about to show you, if we can go to the next slide, it's now taught in 180 countries, impacted the lives of 15 million students. We have 29,300 partnerships, 12,000 academies with over close to 30,000 instructors in our community, and $4.3 billion of investment. So Cisco we go out, we make the sales, we work with telcos, we work with mining companies, we help with their infrastructure solutions. Percentage of those sales go back into this program. And why? Because the world of technology moves at such a pace, we cannot get the skills fast enough. What's just happened in our country in the last couple of weeks? That's turned our worlds upside down. That poor company, because cybersecurity, the skill sets. Why was the door open? How did that happen? And we've got a responsibility in the IT industry to make sure the right kind of skills are being taught. And the thing that I love about my job is there is an argument that you're pushing your brand. You're putting the courses to students around the world, so they're going to go on and buy Cisco. A lot of our courseware is completely agnostic, meaning it's about dealing with networking essential skills, awareness of cybersecurity, change your password, use your favourite song as your password, those type of basic things that people need to understand and learn in our communities. So, move to the next slide, please. We started back in '97 with just this area of courseware. It was our certifications. We put it on a cloud platform back then. Who'd have heard of cloud back then? But we put it on a learning management system that we could send out through the internet and reach 180 countries. Reach people all around the world so they could click on, create a password and start learning. The environments that we only work in are education, non-for-profits and community organisations. However, the story is evolving and we're starting to try and work with a different platform called Skills for All that goes straight to a learner. So Telstra is looking at this Skills for All platform at the moment because it wants to go and reach all its employees with some of our courseware as well as its users. So it's evolving all the time. And so we started with these hands-on networking skills. Then we started evolving into understanding more about operating systems, programming. And this is all technical language, I'm sorry. But these are the skills that a lot of technical teams need to know to operate in a technical environment, to implement technical solutions in organisations. And flexible choices too. We started with just this, instructor-led virtual in-class experiences on a learning management system. But COVID taught us to be working in a hybrid environment more. And the flipped classroom happened for a lot of our instructors around the world during COVID, and a lot of them didn't cope to teaching completely virtually. It was really hard for them, especially technical trainers who like hands-on, practical, taking apart a computer, putting it back together, wanting to see the students learning. To do that completely through a virtual tool was very, very difficult. So a lot of them actually, we had to coach and help them through it. So I talked about Skills for All. So we've now evolved 2 platforms. This was the original one, it's still working. You'll find that TAFE uses this. A lot of our universities in Australia use this because that's got the formal courses that align to Cisco certifications and get students and graduates into jobs. Because the likes of Telstra, to be able to use our skill set or understand a little bit more about solutions, they need to have our certification, our networking certifications. So they're all built into this one. But this one is very exciting. I'm all for this. This is micro-credentials. Who knows what that means? What does micro-credential mean? Short, sharp, quick, anytime, anywhere. Get a little digital badge, all of that palaver. But in Skills for All, there's a 6-hour course on cyber security awareness. so needed at the moment. Now, there's a lot of vendors and there's a lot of content providers who create content, but we're going back to this quality business that you were mentioning about ethical translation, ethical courseware. We have a strong quality assurance framework around everything we do, and that's through our community of instructors. Around the world, we set up certain universities or TAFEs or polytechnics to become a high-level partner with us in the networking academy space. They're called Academy Support Centres or Instructor Training Centres. And they're the elite of the elite. They go through a lot of assessments with us to be able to monitor the quality control of our courseware being delivered. And that comes to translation too. Next slide, please. We like calling it the world's largest classroom. And at the moment, we're proud to say that our courses and our LMS are translated into about 30 languages. Now, I'll just clarify, not every single course, because we have over 28 courses, are translated into 30 languages. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So this is our latest roadmap of the courses that are in Skills for All. A lot of them are obviously in English, all of them are. Some are in French, some are in Portuguese, some are in Spanish. We even have some in Russian and Ukrainian. So next slide. Again, Arabic, Greek, only one course in Greek. That's interesting. I'll tell you why in a minute. So it's a bit of an interesting blueprint of languages and translations. Next slide. Hello. Is it on a timer? Must be. Okay. All right. Is this program promoting good corporate citizen approach? That was one of the questions they wanted me to answer today. Yes, it is. Because I mentioned at the top of this presentation, it's about getting the skills out there. No matter where you are in the world, we want to give every learner an opportunity to learn ICT skills. And we do that by the translation work we invest in to give everyone a chance. Now, we're not only seeing this in translation, we're also with the diversity angle as well. Curtin University offers our program to the visually impaired. So we've had a huge amount of success stories where we've had a professor at Curtin University design our courses with concrete tools and software for the visually impaired to be able to do our courses. We measure it because we fund the translating projects either with reputable agencies that we source or that hierarchy of the Instructor Training Centre and Academy Support Centre structure, the trusted advisors that we have. With our large academy network in our smaller markets, we're able to fund those local translation products. Very important. So here's an example. In India, our instructors love teaching in English. Why? Because a lot of their students want to get jobs all around the world. They want to travel and they want to find work. So the difference is, in Korea, it's a very different traditional approach. The educators will only teach in Korean as their first language before any notion of translation can come into play. That's their cultural difference. And we respect that. So if there is an instructor in Korea who wants to translate, we'll work with them, we'll work with the Academy Support Centre in Korea, and we will fund them locally to do it. And then there's the diversity piece we have around Women Rock IT. More females in ICT is a huge, quest for the industry. It has been for about 15 years. We're getting there. Malaysia leads the way. They've got about 40% of students in Malaysia are female. We're about 15%. A lot more work to do. So we invest in videos of speakers, and this is, I think, an area we need to improve in. because we're having 60-minute broadcasts of English-speaking presenters of young women who are around about under the age of 30, because we're trying to get them to engage with younger audiences. But we should be doing this in other languages. So this is a work in progress. This is an area that we have to improve in, because we're reaching the message of, hey, look at this entrepreneur who's 25 and she's done technology at her college, at her university. But let's hear from somebody who may talk 4 different languages. Wouldn't that be great? So that's it. But I just wanted to emphasise a couple of points. The ethical translation, I think, is a really important message. And it is for us because it's our brand. If we don't get the translation right of the technical content that we're teaching young learners or adult learners, we're in a lot of trouble. Because some of these people go on to work in the hospitals and they implement infrastructure projects. And you don't want something going wrong in a hospital. So we have a huge responsibility to get translation right. So I'll end on that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's so lovely to see, the corporate passion translating into real impact. The interesting thing about Cisco is that, they have systemic solutions to something that's very close to their business, which is, IT skills, digital world. But what I also know Cisco for is their engagement with communities and with supporting diverse groups, with mentoring programs, with really engaging employees, individuals, in engaging in conversations that are meaningful, that can advance individual career goals that people who come here and are unfamiliar with the local job market really need. So I think this is another wonderful thing, that there are systemic challenges, but there is so much that each and every individual can do. So Emma, thank you so much for sharing, and hopefully this will generate some of those possibly links moving forward, so that we move from intention to action. So I will pass on.
Thank you, Bettina. And thank you, ladies. Thank you, everybody that posed some questions as well. Thank you for sharing such an amazing, fantastic examples of good practice in multicultural communication. And thank you for listening and engaging. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I'd like you to encourage to complete this short survey. I think you have a short survey in your tables, and if you can complete it, and then on your way out you can give it to me or any one of the staff. It will be very useful for us to improve our events. And I would now like to invite the stage to Eva, who is going to share some final words with us to conclude for today.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you everyone for coming and engaging. I think we've asked more questions than answers we've been able to provide, but that's okay, because that was the whole point of today. And I think what we were hoping to do through today is provide different perspectives. So you've seen everything from technology to government and everything in between and outside debate. So I think hearing different perspectives, points of view is really important, but also asking yourselves those hard questions. And I know there's been a lot of kind of even emotion around the room, because guess what? This is like the first time in a long time some of us have been around other people. So it's, there's no screen between us. But I just wanted to thank Bettina for hosting us. Apart from being a friend, she's someone that I really truly admire. She teaches people the skills, and she creates the new generation of people that are going to replace us. I'm always very inspired by that. But I think overall, something to think about, right? Like, I hope some of the messages have resonated with you. And whenever I attend an event, I'll often think about, okay, what can I, tomorrow when I go back to my office, what can I take away from today that I can apply tomorrow? What are some of the practical things? So with Emma's presentation, you could see already that there's so much work that, good work that, Cisco's doing. New South Wales government, it's not without challenges. Let's Turkan's already said, and we know because we're there on the ground, grassroots, we know they are what happens, right? But we've got to keep trying. So just like our debate said, are we ready for authentic conversation with Australians? Well, if we're not, we should be, is my takeaway. So tomorrow when you go back to the office or this afternoon, see what is it from today that you could potentially, apply to your practice. It's been good to be around people, but before we go, I need to do one very important thing because, none of this would happen without a team, yeah? So I basically just flew in last night and turned up this morning. Andrea, come. Carla and Angelo, and there are lots of other people in Melbourne that haven't, that worked on this but are not here. But I sincerely wanted to thank the three of you for all the hard work. It's like incredible amount of work, let me tell you. Very, very proud of you, and I want everybody to clap.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank all guests for sharing with us a bit of their time, of their busy agendas, and I want to invite you to follow our Polaron social medias. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and reach out to us if you have any questions or if we can assist you in any way. I hope you have a great rest of the day.